Hello, Wake Forest parents. My name is Dusty Lanier, and I am a proud 2006 graduate of Wake Forest University. And I am so excited that you have joined us here tonight. I hope that your students are preparing for the end of a very successful semester, and they're excited for what the summer will bring. Before we get started, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. Thank you for those who submitted your questions in advance. There'll also be an opportunity through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, should you think of a question that you want to ask throughout our session. We will also be recording tonight's session, so if you have to drop off early or you'd like to rewatch with your student, we'll be providing a link to the recording later this week. So we are so excited again to be here with you tonight. And I want to start off for a few moments to talk about what I think makes our Office of Personal and Career Development one of the most innovative career offices in the country. Now, I know that you all are aware of the statistics that our class of 2023, 98% of those students were employed within 6 months of graduation or enrolled in a graduate program. So those numbers speak for themselves. But when I talk with my colleagues across the country and we talk about what makes our office distinctively Wake Forest, I think of three things. And the first that I think about is the way that my office, the University Advancement Office, partners with our Office of Personal and Career Development to bring programming like this tonight, to connect you, to educate you, to coach you around the key points of how to support your student. Because believe it or not, I know some days you probably don't think this, but they really do listen to you. You are a key influencer, and the knowledge that you bring and the advice that you give them will really influence how they move forward. So we're just so thrilled that you're taking a vested interest in partnering with us to prepare your students. The second is that we really do leverage investments from our alumni, our parents, and our friends, both from a philanthropic standpoint, but also from your network. So many of you with us tonight have offered to do an informational interview with one of our students. You hire interns. You connect us with others who have job opportunities. And so we want to thank you for doing that. For those of you who have already participated, and if that's something that you're interested in supporting, we'll talk about ways that you can do that as well. The last piece is really around our people, and we have some of the most amazing career coaches, employer relations, and leaders in this space really across the country and the world. And tonight you're going to get to hear from two of those. Tonight we're going to be joined by Andy Chan. Andy, we recruited away from Stanford in 2009, and he really is an industry leader in thinking innovatively about how we can continue to respond to the ever-changing market, how we can prepare students for jobs that don't even exist today for the future, and how we can continue to grow and evolve and support our students. We also have Heidi Robinson, who is the Associate Vice President for Career Development. She leads our career coaches and also developed and teaches in our college to career courses. If your students have not signed up for one of those, I hope that they will give it a consider. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to Andy and Heidi.
Well, hi, everyone, and it's great to see you all. Dusty, thank you for that great introduction, and I just want to double down and say the same thing. We just really appreciate all you parents out there for sending us your amazing children to come learn and be with us at Wake Forest, allow us to be part of their journey, and we're very eager to share some of what we know about what's going on in the market and how we can be helpful to them and to you. For some of you, you might know that there's a Q&A button at the bottom. If you feel like you want a question answered, either I or Heidi or someone on our team will actually try to answer it real time, or we'll answer it while we're speaking. But we've got a lot of things to cover, and I'll pass it over to Heidi to say a word of greeting first and let her kick us off.
Thank you, Andy. And really my kickoff, so to speak, is a word of gratitude to our parents. We take it very seriously that your children are here with us and that your students are our students too. So first, let me tip my hat to you and say that in the classroom every day, in our office every day, I'm reminded of what good people you have sent to us and what a privilege it is for us to get to work with them. And with that word of thanks, I would like to sort of transition, Andy, into a place where we talk about some of the things that students may say to us, or even reflecting things that they've heard in the media, where they say, what is the market like for college students right now, for those seeking internships or other kinds of summer experiences? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, great question, and one that everyone has an opinion, but very few people actually know what is really going on. And what we can tell you today is, and we have some slides to share a little bit of this information, is that the job market is actually pretty strong for college students. I know it may seem sort of strange because everyone feels like the economy is sort of a little squirrely. You can't really figure out what's going on. And again, the job market is different than the stock market, that's for sure. But that when we look at the number of jobs posted to our students and internships, we're seeing a growth of over 22% from last year and 42% since October, which is amazing. Now, the one thing that we can also see is that many of those jobs are in the areas of government, nonprofit, healthcare, accounting, and education, which are all really great areas to work in, but aren't always the ones that sometimes students first think of when they say, where do I want to go work as a college student? And as you can see in the next bullet point, many of the traditionally popular sectors, including banking, consulting, fashion, and technology, are either flat or declining. It doesn't mean they aren't hiring, because actually we've had quite a few students already being able to secure positions in these areas, and they're still coming. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that works and why that works. But it can be a little bit confusing for students because oftentimes, and their parents, they think all the recruiting happened during the fall, there's nothing left. And actually, we have more jobs in our system than we've had the entire year. Right now, at this moment, I think over this entire year, there have been over 160,000 positions posted to our students, which again, for 5,000 total undergrads, of which maybe a third of them go on to grad school, it's a lot more opportunities than that we actually have as students. But the bottom line for us is that we're even though we feel concerned for those students who didn't get exactly what they wanted, we're giving them lots of ideas on how to think about new things and not to give up. Like, the market is strong enough that there are opportunities. We have to be open to being flexible, seeing things that may not be the big brand names, and also really thinking about, like, what do I have to do to make sure like I am really competitive and can participate in this opportunity and the sort of job and career readiness process in a really positive way. So that I feel pretty good about things, even though it may feel a little bit hard for those who are still looking right at the moment.
I love what you just said, Andy, that encouraging students to look beyond the big brand, because some of the very best summer experiences may be at a place where a student hasn't heard the name. It might be the supplier who's helping Lululemon, for instance, or the people who are helping with systems for Apple. And so really being thoughtful about giving everything a second look and really doing their homework, so to speak. So given all of those things, how do you feel like our students will fare this year?
Well, I'm really optimistic, and I'm a sort of a macro trend person. One of the things that I can look at is what we've been able to do over the last several years. I'd actually say really our time together over a decade, really strong results. And so we have a slide here to show you how, when we think about our students, where things work out. And going back to 2018, every single year, we're somewhere between 97 or 96 and 100%, with one year, 2020, which most of you all are aware, COVID year, where we hit 94, 93.7. So this is all within 6 months of graduation. We feel like there's a big reason why, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about like what makes our students so distinctive in terms of how we can get to these successful places. But I feel like because these macros trends have actually held, I actually think it's going to be similar this year. And the reason is that some of these years, actually, in terms of number of jobs available to students, I'd have to be honest, in 2018, 19, it was a lot less than it is now. And we had these kind of outcomes. Even in 2020 during COVID, I think we hit a year where we thought things were going to be really tough. And the market bounced back, and also our students really showed up well and show up well. And I do think that that's a big factor as to why I'm pretty confident that even though it may feel like for those who don't have something, it's going to be hard to get something. And I know that for those of you out there who are thinking about, well, for internships, what about that? Well, I do feel like, it feels like every single day as another student comes in the door that says, I have something. And so, all it takes is one. And oftentimes these companies are really deciding very last minute. And so I think, again, just staying in the game, don't giving up is a really important concept to keep thinking about.
I love that, Andy. And it is so true that it is all starting to roll in right now in terms of student announcements. And I'm keeping an eye on LinkedIn because it is so exciting to see. I'm pleased to announce, and it does feel like they're coming fast and furious right now, and there are even more to come. So I think about our students who have been watching LinkedIn and they may think everybody's got something but me. No, I mean, students are in the hunt right now, and we are here to help them with that. So I actually really like that idea. In fact, I said in class earlier today, why not you? Look at our numbers. Why wouldn't you figure it out? If 51,000 Wake Forest alums on LinkedIn figured it out, you will too.
Yeah, that makes me think though, I do feel like now we've been doing this for a while. Wake Forest, the experience of this school, what we help our students do, it does differentiate them from others. Another common question students ask is, what's going to make me stand out relative to all these great students in the country, relative to people who went to more selective schools or actually even my classmates. And I know you spent a lot of time with them, and as do I, and we know they are differentiated, and this is why we have these great outcomes. Can you speak a little bit to what you think those things are that make our students really different than others out in the market?
Yes, I will. And I would say our students sometimes need to be reminded how unique they are as a group. They are surrounded constantly by other high achieving, brilliant students, and they forget that they all have these important skills that differentiate them from others from other universities. So I'll start by thinking about a list that comes out every year. It's from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. We call it NACE, and it's one of the industry. We watch it. It's a very important list to us because we are consistently trying to help our students highlight those core skills that make them stand out. Well, it was so much fun for me to look at that NACE 2024 list of key skills, because let me tell you what they were: critical thinking and problem solving, initiative, work ethic, writing, verbal communication, interpersonal skills. These are the hallmarks of Wake Forest students. And I will tell you, one of the stories I will always remember was one of, it was homecoming. A young alumna came back and she was so excited. I just need to talk to you. She was working at ABC in New York, so excited. And she sat down in our office and cried. And I said, what is going on? And she said, no one works as hard as we do at work. Wake Forest. And I said, I know, okay, but that will be rewarded. And it certainly was within her field. And she moved up quickly. And I would say that is one of the distinctive characteristics of Wake Forest students. They don't realize how good they are, but it is indeed all of those core skills of the liberal arts education.
I definitely I agree on communication skills for sure. I also think that a lot of employers will just tell us oftentimes that our students they're just really great at being able to, show that they will do the work and work hard and show up and not complain about it. And employers love that. And also that our students are very much team players. It seems like, our culture is a very collaborative culture. Yes, everyone's competitive inside, but actually they are really willing. They want everyone to win. And they really appreciate that. I think that they're generally, our students' interpersonal skills are really top notch, and employers really like that because so many students these days are really just buried in their phones. And even though I know parents are thinking, well, my child's buried in their phone, at Wake Forest, they're not. They're actually really dealing with both faculty, staff, and students alike. And really, I think that interpersonal dynamic really bodes well when they get to the workplace and when they get to interviews.
I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, we had one of our seniors, he's headed to Microsoft, and he was in a group setting where there were lots of students or other applicants who were from other really fine schools. And some of them had a little bit more experience than he had in his last internship. And he asked when he got his offer, what made me different? And the recruiter said, you're the whole package. I can't teach someone to have the interpersonal skills that you have. I can teach someone to have I can get more experience for someone, but I can't teach them to be like you are. And I feel like that is actually very representative of who's on our campus.
Agreed. Well, one of the things that we wanted to chat about is oftentimes students come to us with frustrations, and we hear them a lot. And we wanted to sort of go back and forth and talk a little bit about them with each other. Take a few minutes before we have some of our great students come on board and share a little bit of their experience and how they've fared during this process and how they've handled the challenges. So let's go to that. Let's talk about some of the frustrations and maybe some of the facts that we have that help both parents and students understand, like, how does this whole process work? What makes it really difficult? So the first one is students will oftentimes say, I can't find any opportunities that interest me. And Heidi, can you speak to that? Like, why is that more frustration than fact?
It is frustration. One of the things that I would say is that we are constantly, daily, sometimes hourly, getting updates on really incredible opportunities that are in Handshake. The frustration for students may come because they may not see them. We have something called saved searches on Handshake. And if a student's not getting notifications consistently from that saved search, they might not know that there are really fascinating, great opportunities that pop up every day. So one of the things I would say is probably not being in our job search platform called Handshake daily and using those saved searches to make it all a lot easier for themselves. The other thing I would say is students often think, again, I'm back to brand name, that it has to be a brand name in order to be a great experience. And the thing is, I would rather have a student do the kinds of work that they love, regardless of the setting and or company, so that they continue to refine those skills. And so sometimes the frustration can come from just not yet having developed sophisticated search skills. Andy, how about you? What do you think on that particular?
I think those are exactly right. Yeah, and the only one other thing I would say is that, you and I, we go out and we meet a lot of people, and every person we meet, we ask them what do they do and might they want to hire a college student, and I'd say like 50% of the time they're like, sure, we'd love to do it, and we pass them over to our employer relations team. They follow up, and before you know it, we've got a posting on the system that wasn't there the day before, and so whether it be Dickey Enterprises, that's the media company that does the Atlanta Braves and all the Atlanta sports teams, or whether it's a private equity firm down in Atlanta that we met when we were down there. Like, it happens literally like every week. There's another handful that come in just because we are talking to people out in the marketplace. So we're going to ask you parents out there, if you have a company that wants to hire a student for the summer, like, let us know. We will follow up. And so these are kinds of things where students don't see us behind the scenes doing this kind of work, and they may miss something. We actually post within, oftentimes these are like Wake Forest network opportunities. Like, these are ones that we're saying we have sourced them. They are like, there's like a Wake Forest friendly person who wants to hire a Wake Forest student. So it's really to students' best interest to keep their eye on that.
And Andy, I would add to what you just said, on LinkedIn, students can join a Wake Forest group that is called Wake Forest University Career Connectors. And that it's specific to Wake Forest students, alumni, and allies, parents. Once students join, the amazing feed that I was looking at today with students, our alums are calling and they're getting hold of our folks, and there are jobs and internships posting. We're hiring. What that tells us is not only are there opportunities, but there are allies within these organizations. And it is a busy LinkedIn group with some very fierce alumni who want to hire more Wake Forest students.
Yeah. We have a couple others here, but I'm gonna ask Brian to just go ahead and go down to the last one, which is, I need the perfect junior summer internship to get a full-time return offer. I think others can read the ones in between, but Heidi, can you speak to that about, like, what is how crazy do we have to be about getting like this perfect summer internship my junior summer? If I don't, actually, like, the rest of my life is over, or I won't get a job for full time, or I won't get a good company, things like that. You probably have tons of stories of students who worry about that, and how do we really see what happens?
Yes, I would say, again, I'm back to student stories at this point. I have many, but I had a student last year who was afraid to take a role in DC with a major corporation where she'd be doing legislative work and sort of going back and forth between corporate and legislative. And she was worried because she knew she wouldn't get a return offer. They'd been very clear about that up front. What she got instead of a return offer was an incredible experience. That then we told that story on her resume, on her LinkedIn, on her handshake. She built her network while she was there and really leveraged that experience to tell her story. She was interested in consulting. So she was able to go ahead and get great experience. And that is what I would say to every student. Get great experience. It's a small percentage. Sometimes it feels like it's more than it is when students are watching LinkedIn and they think, oh, that person got a return offer. What's wrong with me? Not that at all. It's just that it's a very small percentage of students who actually get that return offer. Get a
Yeah.
good experience, build great skills and networks. That's the most
Great.
important part.
Great. I can't sort of emphasize that enough. There's so many students who actually go to their junior summer and realize, oh, this internship isn't actually what I want to do. They might actually get an offer and then feel almost like, well, I better take it even though I don't like it. And sometimes it's almost better to, like you said, get experience at something you're really interested in, and then sort of again, trust that you'll have the tools and the skills and the support from us to help you get to that great place sometime your senior year. Although I know everyone wants it to be like, I want to have it all over with as soon as I can. Everyone wants to get out of that uncertainty, but that actually leads to, interestingly, like the reality is sometimes these new opportunities pop up that you wouldn't have known about if you'd actually already taken yourself out of the market. So another one, I'm going to go to the first one. Don't have any experience. So a lot of, students who are, first year sophomores, even juniors might feel like I don't have that much work experience. Job descriptions seem like they want someone with a lot of experience, or they want the perfect major, and I don't have that major, so I shouldn't even apply. Can you speak to that? Because I know we really try to push students to say, you have more experience than you realize, and also you should apply, but I'd love to hear again, maybe some stories or examples of that.
Absolutely. I think our students have beautiful spirits. They're very humble. And what that ends up looking like is they dismiss or dilute the story that they actually have. Not because they don't want to tell their story, they just don't realize how many experiences they have in campus organizations, experiences and skills they are gaining from their classes. And even as first years, they're taking Writing 111. Those final projects actually have embedded in them writing skills that can land an internship. So what I would say is that students are actually much more skilled and much more experienced than they often think about. One of the things that we're quite passionate about right now is helping first years and sophomores really unpack the academic experience they have, because they're gaining the kinds of skills that employers want to.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've seen you talk about and present too is oftentimes students will come with their high school resume and they're not very impressed by it. And it obviously is not in the format that we have. But then when they come in and we start talking to them about those experiences, they start to realize they've had more responsibility than they thought. They might actually even had authority over things that they didn't realize, or dealing with risks or budgets or financial stuff that they hadn't. They're dealing with customers in a way that they didn't know how to talk about it. And then all of a sudden, that whole idea of going from your high school to college resume, it's like a student literally, like, they walk out, I almost feel like their chest is up, like, I'm pretty good.
I'm
Because
pretty
you helped me
good.
see, like, those experiences really were something. And I would say oftentimes, like, what people don't recognize is that, yes, what you study in the classroom is a value, but oftentimes what you did outside of the classroom, whether you were involved in a club, or you were fundraising or doing marketing or helping with the finances, like, all those things are the kinds of skills and experiences that employers really are looking for. And so I think what you do outside the classroom is as important as to what you do inside the classroom, which relates to the major point too. And I know you're going to talk about that later, a little bit about like majors and why students can major in one thing and actually work in a totally different area and how that happens.
Andy, you asked about an example, and I have a student in the college and very passionate about majoring in the liberal arts. And as he did his resume, he said, to your point, I don't have a lot to put on there. Well, we started sort of talking about what that was. And one of his experiences was as a volunteer firefighter, which he had done during the summers.
Mm-hmm.
When he went into we went ahead and actually looked at all of the skills that were in there, the readiness, the way he inventoried thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment that needed to be constantly in readiness. That was what the interviewer wanted to talk about. Not so much the other things, but this great story that really showed a different side of him, but also a very professional competencies. So I think really helping students, that's one of the things we love to do, is to help students understand the value in the experiences that they have. They have a lot of skills. We sometimes need to remind them of that.
Well, you and I are going to talk a little bit more at the end. I would really love to have the students come out, because I feel like, kinds of things that a lot of times we hear from people. They'll say, how do I get my student motivated to come to the office? Maybe our students can share a little bit about how they got motivated or how they could motivate the others. And also, like, this idea of what we've written here around this idea of projects and experiences, like maybe it's not a big formal 10-week internship, but something shorter. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, about ways students can do that. So we don't have to take the time now, but we'll come back to some of these questions, I'm sure, in the background of what you're going to talk to the students about. So let me pass it over to you and to them. They, to me, are the stars of our show. So I will bow out and come back a little later.
They are the stars of our show. Allie, Catherine, Stephen, so glad to see all of you, and thank you all for being with us. There is no one, there are not words that I can say that explain the student experience in the way that you do. So I appreciate you being here, all of you. First, I would love for you all to go ahead and introduce yourselves and give us your name, your major, and where you're from.
Okay, I can start. So my name is Catherine Burgess. I'm a sophomore and I'm studying communications, and I am from New Canaan, Connecticut.
I'm Allie. I am a junior. I'm studying communications, and I'm from Washington, D.C.
And I'm Stephen. I'm a sophomore as well, and I'm studying French and economics, and I'm originally from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Thank you all for being with us. So I think what I'd like to do is start by asking, for a student at Wake Forest, we have sophomores, we have juniors. Allie, you've been involved in our office for a long time. All of you have. What is the hardest part about the internship process, and why does it feel heavy sometimes for students?
So I think the hardest part is a lot of the Wake Forest student body are kids who are extremely driven and are used to putting in the work and seeing the results, which is an amazing trait to have. I know I had it coming here. I know every single Wake student has it, but in the real life and in the job search, that isn't always how it works. And that can be very disheartening. I know with my own internship search, it took a really long time, and it took a lot of reaching out to different people and looking at my different assets that I could have to kind of finally get to where I am. And even then, it still is going to be a long haul. I'm only a sophomore, and I have a lot more work to do and connections to make as I keep going. But I think the biggest thing is just understanding that as long as I have the ability to work and understand the value that I have and my worth as a Wake Forest student, and understand how much work I'm putting into it and the skills that I'm gaining from coming here, it's just, you have to keep grinding at it pretty much. Ali, Stephen, you want to hop in?
I can. I was going to say, you exactly touched on what I was going to say. The culture here can be really competitive, and it's good because it pushes you, but it's kind of like they mentioned earlier. You see these people getting these summer 2025 internships, and that's not the normal for students. You might see it on your LinkedIn and think that it's normal, but it's not. So I think that's kind of more of the personal aspect of it. I also think something that's difficult is that getting some of these internships is almost like a game. And thankfully, I took EDU 220 with one of the career coaches, and they taught me a few tips and tricks on how to play the game. But it's really about, I think, like for some of the really competitive ones, like it's a 1%, 2% admit rate. Like you get the internship to 1 to 2%. So when you look at it like that, you really have to do more than just have an amazing cover letter and amazing resume. Most of the work goes in with networking. And like they've mentioned many times, the Wake Network is so willing to help. You can go on LinkedIn and connect them. And the way it works is you connect with them and then they'll connect you with someone else on your team. And you just build this list of connections. So I think that it's more about expressing and exercising those interpersonal skills that are really important through interviewing and building connections. That has helped me the most.
I love that. That leans right back into this whole idea of skills and the things that are unique about Wake Forest. Allie, I saw that you were ready to go too. I'd like to hear from you also.
Well, I just to kind of, they touched exactly, hit the nail right on the head. But one thing, I'll just discuss a little bit was that, we do have a competitive nature. And so you feel like everyone is has their internship. But I actually looked, and the people that I know that actually live in the community where I live off campus, there's 32 of us. And I went through the list and we're all juniors. 15 people in that group don't have summer opportunities yet. They're still looking. And so I do think that and they'll, I'm 100% sure all of them will have amazing opportunities this summer, but it does sometimes happen a little bit later. It happens differently for every person. And one thing, I'll also point to is that my sophomore year, I applied to 97 jobs. I was crazy. Wow. I lived in the OPCD. I was like insane. I mean, this is hour 4 of me sitting in the OPCD today. So I was crazy. But, I found there was only one, and that's exactly where I wanted to be. I got amazing experience. It took a lot, kind of what Stephen was saying of playing the game right. 97 of those, I had excellent cover letters and an excellent resume, and I only got interview opportunities at about 10 to 20 of them. How many of those did I, even hear back after the interview? Maybe 4 or 5. It really is this game of networking and learning, what they're looking for, expressing that interest. So now going in as a junior, I have a list of not 97 applications, but people that I've networked with, that network that I've built, those people I've talked to on LinkedIn. That is way more important than the number of job applications I've filled out this year.
Oh, Allie, I love what you just said. We tell students all the time, if we are just going ahead and applying up into a black hole, we haven't done the right thing by ourselves. Letting people within the organization know, having conversations, even when you're not sure that you want to be at a particular company, but getting advice from our alums who are so passionate. And I want to go ahead and what Allie just said really struck me. Catherine and Stephen, as sophomores, you talked a lot about, and Allie did too, applying. There's a part of that there's when you have to keep sort of digging in, sometimes you get tired and maybe a little disheartened. How did you do that? And what was that like?
Yeah, so definitely for me, a lot of it was leaning back on my parents. My parents are extremely supportive of me, and I definitely had an interesting career search in that at the start of my academics at Wake Forest, I thought I wanted to do completely business, and then throughout that, I then finally switched and realized I wanted to do more corporate communications, and now I'm doing marketing. And so starting and going along that journey is kind of the first step to figuring out what you want to do. And my parents are very supportive of that and very supportive in helping me find opportunities. For the past about 3 or 4 months, I've been applying every single week to kind of like Allie was going on. It's like 5 jobs here that I see. Oh, I know someone who is offering this. Let me email them and apply to that. And a lot of times people won't get back to you, especially as a sophomore, because you're only a sophomore. I had jobs that I would just get an automated response back, and it would simply have gotten flagged that I was a sophomore and they were looking for someone who was already had completed their junior year. And so that's just disheartening, because I also think there is a common lie that you need to have an internship like freshman summer is your last real summer, then you need to have a small internship your sophomore summer, and then the big one your junior summer. And oh, if you don't have that small one your sophomore summer, then you're not going to know what to do. And I do think that's a very common misconception. I think it's important to wet your feet. And that is what's been important for me, because when I first started applying to jobs, I remember my first interview was a recorded interview, which I had no idea how to do that. And I had to research that, talk to people in the OBCD and figure that out. And honestly, it was probably not my best representation of myself. I kind of stumbled on my words, and I obviously did not hear back from the job at all. But since then, and since that experience, it was every time I failed or every time I didn't do as well on maybe one internship opportunity, I would do better on the next one, and then I would slowly start to hear back. And so I really think it's not something that's going to get that instant gratitude. It's a really long haul, because every time you talk to more people, you're continuing to build yourself up and brand yourself to these companies and to these other people. And that's going to be kind of the motivating factor, because you're building your own self-confidence.
Catherine, I appreciate that we have to get practice, right? We have to get reps, and interviewing is not necessarily something that we wake up knowing when we get up in the morning. It does take practice. So I appreciate that you're speaking to that idea that getting reps in, even when you're not sure if you want that opportunity, is really important. And it does help you grow. Stephen, I was going to ask you, when you were applying to different things, what was it like when you didn't hear back? I think students often stop there because they feel like, well, they didn't get back in touch with me. It's me. Can you speak to that a little bit, that feeling?
Yes, happily. I have been rejected from numerous internship opportunities, and that is just the beauty of the game that I was talking about earlier. One thing that I didn't realize is that for a lot of internships, before they'll even read your cover letter or your resume, they're going to scan it through some artificial intelligence and make sure that the keywords in the job description are in your cover letter and your resume. So I think that for me, it was just a learning experience. I think that a lot of the rejection that I experienced in the beginning was because I needed some more practice, like we've been talking about. I was new to the game. And, going into the OPCD, figuring out that process, eventually built it up. Of course, rejection sucks. It's not fun, but you just have to keep shooting your shots as at many places as you can. And like Catherine said, you'll get better. And I think that the way I would describe the internship process is you're selling yourself. It's almost like a sales job, but instead of an item, it's you. And you kind of have to learn a lot about yourself in order to sell yourself. And that's been my experience so far.
I love that. So sort of what we talked about earlier is really unpacking all of your experience, all those skills that are really valuable. I want to ask, so when you were feeling like it's frustration, sometimes it feels personal, it's not. Can you talk about how you followed up once you went ahead and applied? I think sometimes our students are so gracious and so worried about sometimes they use the word pushy, that it can be hard to follow up. Allie, can you speak to that? Because I know you're helping a lot of your roommates and your friends right now. What advice do you give?
Yeah, there is no such thing as too pushy. I always say, like, if anyone has ever signed up for those political campaign emails, like, if you're not on like that level of pushiness, then like nothing's going to happen for you. So I always say, of course, with respect, and Wake students, of course, do it cordially, but it is such a beautiful thing to form that connection with someone. Your email might have genuinely come into their inbox as they were doing something else and they forgot to respond. Following up never hurts. I also always say, if you apply to a job, you haven't applied unless the recruiter or someone knows your name. And so that's something that's really important, of tapping into, those LinkedIn career connectors, which Heidi was talking about, going on that Wake network that we have, of finding someone who works at that company, and making sure that at least one person on the other side knows your name. Because I promise you, those 96 opportunities that I didn't get were probably because someone didn't know my name. Just like Stephen was saying with that AI tool, that they actually take your resume out from that AI tool if someone knows your name. And so your resume is not going into that regular bucket, it's going into that special bucket. And so for me, how I got my opportunity was through, reaching out blindly on LinkedIn, asking for an informational interview. I actually got denied from that job for the woman that gave me that informational interview. I circled back, thanked her for the time, and then mentioned that I, didn't get the opportunity. If she could, recommend me talking to anyone else, she offered another 30 minutes. I got on the phone with her. She introduced me to 5 wait grads at the company I now work for. I interned there last summer. I'm excited to go back, and it has been an amazing opportunity. That all came from a random LinkedIn informational interview.
You all, I tell you what, you are putting me out of a job. I think that I would hire all of you. In fact, I am grateful for the ways that you are helping other students. I would love to hear just a little nugget of advice. We have parents who are listening who their children are in the middle of the hunt to know that this is actually the time where we're starting to hear about internships. It's not all finished, as some people think it is. What is your word of advice, a brief gem for parents who are listening when they're helping their children?
My biggest advice would be to think back to your own experiences when you were job hunting. I think for my parents, they definitely had a difficult time understanding how some of the times have changed with the development of all these new technologies, and just the fact that like there are so many more competitive markets out there in the job market. And so a lot of it was my parents kind of reflecting back on when they were figuring out who they were, what they wanted to do, was really important. Also, a lot of my parents thought back to their own connections. So they had people who worked in the marketing industries or PR industries who they just had me sit down and talk to. So when I went home over winter break this year, I met with like 3 or 4 different people who my parents knew that worked in some various company. And I just asked them, what did they like about their job? What made them tick? What was their passion? And that really just helped me not only develop those connections for their companies, but just develop my own sense of, okay, my parents went on this path as well. This is a normal path that every person has to go on to become a working part of society. And the other kind of part with that is don't rush through life. If you try and rush everything or get focused too much on, okay, what's the next best thing that I can apply for, get, etc., you're going to really miss out on the actual experiences you're having and the relationships you're building in that moment. So I would really focus with all of your Wake Forest students on making sure that they're just really embracing everything, not taking no for an answer, and then just really being there for them, because they're going to have to face a lot of rejection.
That's right. Understanding that that's part of it. Allie, can you give us the final quick word?
I will say I love my parents so much. They needed to sit back on this one. And I think it's a hard conversation to have, around school and internships and all this stuff. And so it was really helpful. There are people who are here to help, and that is what the OPCD is. They have candy and coffee and meetings and anything you could ever want. This is really the place to send them. So I think, maybe if you haven't had that initial conversation with your student at this point about what they're doing this summer, or maybe if you have and you're kind of struggling of like, I don't know what to do at this point, it really is just a great resource to just come into a walk-in office hours, make an appointment. There really is so many opportunities here that I think students might not even know, and even on the OPCD website to go on. So just anything OPCD, I would honestly say, parents, this one might have to go to the OPCD and maybe not on you.
You all, I can't thank you enough. And Allie, I love your parents too. They are wonderful. And I know that they are all so proud of all 3 of you. Thank you so much for helping us tell the story. And today, friends, Catherine heard back on her internship. Congratulations. You have worked hard for that. Congratulations. All right. Thank you all. I'll let you get back to studying. And I think Andy and I will jump back in and have a few more words. Thank you all.
Catherine, Allie, Stephen, thank you very much for being with us. You were awesome.
Thank
Just as Heidi said, we're ready for new team members. At a certain point, we'll definitely be coming after you because you understand this
Right.
process and you learned how to do it well. You know, one of the things that we talk about is we're trying to help students be career ready for life. We actually want them to learn the tools that they'll be able to use for the rest of their lives so that they can be employable through their entire life. And I can sense, and hopefully you can too, that those 3 students and many, many more are learning those skills that'll help them know that even if 5 years from now they need to find another job, they know how to go about doing it and won't wonder, like, did they get that from college? So, you know, obviously I know some of our students out there are still maybe not as engaged as these 3 students. Heidi, what would you say are a few, maybe before we go into some of these other questions, just a really quick one on this is, what's a few things we can do like right now to help the student get engaged if they haven't been engaged so far to make sure like they can get started on the process?
So a couple of things. I'll speak to something that we have known about Gen Z for a few moments, which is, and frankly, it's just true for all generations, but Gen Z seems to be, particularly post-COVID, a lot more comfortable if they can bring a friend. We have drop-in hours. I would encourage a student to come with a friend to the OPCD. We've got truly, they can drop in from 1:30 to 4:30, Monday through Thursday, and just kind of get some ideas with one of our coaches about how to get started. Our website is very accessible. And to the point that Allie made, there is a lot on there that we want students to see and to use. And it's very rich in terms of different kinds of strategy, but also different ways of getting engaged. And the first thing I would have them do is to build their handshake profile and get in there and just play with some of the saved searches and see what's there. Because our employer relations team every single day is finding things that are just for Wake Forest students.
That's great. And definitely come by our office any afternoon. We have open office hours, and we always have lots of students hanging around learning from you and our other coaches and even from other students. So we welcome that anytime. It's never too late. Well, there are a couple slides we put together that relate to all these different topics. So maybe why don't we go to the first one, which is where do our students go and how can we help them, you know, using our website? And you obviously teach in our classes, and part of that whole process is teaching our students to use the resources that we have. So maybe you can walk through the first question around like, where do we help them figure out where do students go and given their major and things like that?
So I truly believe that there is a myth, and Andy, you've spoken to this, that some students think that some majors have it easier than others in this process. And that's just not true. As you heard from our students, it's something that everybody works at and kind of digs in and works toward. And all Wake Forest students can do this. So this Where Do Deeks Go is a wonderful place for both parents and for students to start. Because what you can do is go ahead and open Where Do Deeks Go, and you can start to see exactly where they go. These are just some of the top employers that love our students, that come back time and time again. And you can see that they are from names that our students do recognize. And these are the folks who have hired 1 or 2 Wake Forest students, and they want more. So when students are kind of sorting through and thinking to themselves, what is it I want to do? We have this other page that is called our first destination data, and it is by major. So let's say we had 2 communications students talking, and so we could click on communication. We won't, but this may be something that you would like to do at home. And it will open up an Excel spreadsheet from 2004 until 2022 that shows by year where all communication students have gone. It shows what their job function was, geographically where they were, and who they were working for. It is rich. And sometimes that's a great place for our students to start and say, oh my goodness, I can't tell the difference between what communication majors are doing and some of the other majors, because our students really use that liberal arts degree as a flexible tool in their hands. We were talking a little bit about handshake, and I'd like parents to know what that sort of can be like for their student, for their child. So we picked marketing, well, Catherine primarily talked about marketing, but Allie's done some too. And one of the things I would say is a student can go into their Handshake account. Their search engines are really interesting. You can see right here, you can just search by the skill or the kind of thing that you want to do. Now, this search was done today, and these are some of the different kinds of opportunities that popped up. So the search was for marketing, the location was New York, and then you can see the other filter was internship. Went ahead and you can run that search, and these are just some of the different things that are popping up. Once a student has gone ahead and done a search, you can see that periwinkle box that says, notify me about new jobs like this. And frankly, who doesn't want that kind of extra support? Students can go ahead and click on that, and they can get daily or weekly updates on these kinds of opportunities that matter to them. So both Allie spoke to this, Catherine spoke to this, Stephen spoke to this. It's really also finding where are our allies at Alpha Sites? Who are our alumni who are there? One of the things that we're really passionate about teaching students to do is to find their allies in our LinkedIn network. So parents, you can do this, and certainly your students can. On LinkedIn, you can look up Wake Forest University. In fact, you'll see it. It will show our seal. Once you click on that and then go to alumni, you will see this whole variety of different filters. Again, using New York and marketing as the filters we're looking at right here, we can go ahead and say New York City, marketing, and these are some of our alum that are doing these amazing things in marketing and that our students can reach out to through our LinkedIn groups. So just an example of other ways that we want students to go ahead and begin to look at those kinds of folks who can help them with that inside track. Other tools that I think are really important for first-year sophomores and juniors is to know that they can be getting experience now with some pretty big brand name companies. There is a website called Forage, and Forage gives students an opportunity to do a project for one of these companies, and their promise is that someone from the company will go ahead and review the project and give that student some feedback on how they did. This is a quote from Forage, which I find so powerful, that companies are more than twice as likely to hire the students who do these simulations or small projects. So that is something that students can be doing now. You can see some of these things are 6 to 7 hours or 2 to 3 hours, and some are even less than that. Another place that we really love sending students is called Parker Dewey. Parker Dewey has really led the way in micro-internships, which is something that we encourage all students to be doing. They can do, again, the time is somewhat flexible. Students can choose a 1-hour project, or they can choose some that have been 20 hours. And these micro-internships are project-based and paid. So a student can really go ahead and string together several of these Parker Dewey micro-internships, and on a couple of different levels, they can sample what they're interested in. We've had some of these companies who hire our student for a micro-internship and then say, hey, this is great stuff. I'd like to keep you through the academic year as an intern long-term. So these things actually end up being really helpful for students. It gets them the experience, it builds their skills, and it builds their confidence. So I would say for students, we were talking a little bit with our students about hidden gems. And I would say that both Forage and Parker Dewey are two of the gems that we really want our students doing. Again, we're back to it's summer experience. Not all companies have 12-week internships. What they do have are needs for extra hands and talent like our Wake Forest students have.
Thank you, Heidi, for that great overview of all the different tools out there. One of the things that is really key, as Heidi just stated and Allie said too, is that we have all this information on our website. And so if students are unsure about how to proceed, they can find it on our website and get directions. Sometimes there are videos there that show them how to use it. And like we said earlier, that they can come to our office any afternoon and get some help with using these tools and using them as best possible. Make an appointment with a coach is very easy. You can do it by coming to the front desk, calling, or sending an email, or actually using Handshake. And Handshake's usually the easiest way because you can go right in there. You have to poke around a little bit. Sometimes students see that some coaches are busy, but actually if they look a little further, they'll see, oh, wait, there are a bunch of coaches available. I had to look a little further. So they can get, sometimes they'll tell us there's nothing available, but there actually is, even though that's what they might say. So just keep pushing them to be persistent, and they can definitely find us. I definitely want to mention that.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, Andy. Every student in the college has a career coach. Every major has a coach affiliated with that department. And students can make an appointment with any of our coaches that they feel a connection with. And sometimes that's the best thing of all, is to find somebody that you really click with. And so if one coach hasn't necessarily, you felt like that relationship was there, try another, because I think that's a really important thing to do. Find the person that you like working with.
I loved how you took a moment to share the importance of experiences. We really try to mention that to students a lot, that it is internships are one thing. There are actually a lot of companies that don't do formal internships. They just have projects, or they have summer job. And then others will say, hey, I've got like a little 2-week or 1-week project, or even just job shadowing, where you can follow me around the office for a day. And so oftentimes, like parents of first year students who are totally comfortable with the fact the student doesn't have maybe a big job for the summer, and also maybe they're doing something for part of the summer already to make some money. They could be being a caddy, they could be a coach, they could be counselor at a camp, but they're not all summer, but they still have a 2 or 3 weeks where they need something to do. And people will oftentimes, students will say, well, no one's going to hire me for 2 or 3 weeks. But actually, one of the things that I like to talk to parents, talk to their students about, is this phrase, what are you interested in? Not what do you want to do? Because students don't really know what they want to do. I mean, you and I talk about the number of jobs students know about tend to be the things that they've seen or they've seen on TV, and that's about it. And there's a lot more jobs in the world than there are that. And so what are you interested in? And if one of them says, well, maybe I might want to go to law school, think about, in your community, is there a person who's a lawyer? And maybe you and your student together could reach out and say, hey, I'd love to come by and maybe have breakfast, or come to your office. And would you mind if I came and just job shadowed and sort of saw what it was like to work in a law firm? And maybe they might say, oh, there's a junior clerk who's in the office who they would send to do that. Well, that's perfect, right? Someone who's maybe 23, 25 years old is out there who's thinking about law school, and your student gets to meet them and talk to them. They might actually say, hey, why don't you come? I'll show you around the office. And then all your student has to say is, do you have any like work you need to do this summer, like some research or organization or something? And they go, oh, now that you mentioned it, I do have something. And then you have a couple-day project. These kinds of little projects both help you know what you might like, but also what you don't like. And sometimes they turn into things where if you come back to our office at the end of the summer and say, hey, I did these 3 things, they had nothing to do with each other. We go, well, let's help you figure out how to put them on your resume. And before you know it, you've got a resume that looks like you're a junior, even though you just did 3 projects your freshman summer. So I just think that that's the thing. You just have to be willing to be a little bit more flexible and creative, and know that you don't have to do like the big quote unquote internship at a big name company for it to have value. Because oftentimes it's actually working in these small places that people give you more time, more responsibility, and attention that actually gets you to learn things faster. So I just put that out there as a way to think about first year, not having so much pressure. It has to be like the perfect year for a perfect summer.
And I would say, back to your creative point, one of the things that students say is, well, can I go back to my camp and work as a counselor? Will that throw my race in terms of careers when I'm a senior? Not at all. I mean, but one of the things I would add is I said I had this conversation with a student who really wanted to do golf course design. There aren't very many opportunities for that. It's kind of niche. But the one developer said to him, well, yeah, I'll hire you for the summer. You can dig irrigation ditches. And what the student and I looked at was, what does his website look like? What does his social media look like? Our student, won't surprise you at all, was willing to dig those irrigation ditches, but he also put together a little summary of what he had seen on the social media and the website, not only of the developer, but also of their competitors. And that particular developer said, I want you to, sure, you can dig some ditches. I'd like that. But what I really want is for you to come in and work on my social media. So there's a way to go ahead and be a camp counselor, and maybe you help with parent communication, or you organize different kinds of things that show your project management. There are lots of ways for students to go ahead and get that experience.
Well, Heidi, I know that you and I could talk for a long time about different ideas. I want to say a big thank you to Patrick for answering all the questions, setting up this whole webinar, and Brian for behind the scenes helping us manage all the slides, and for Dusty and Melissa too for the work they did, and obviously the students who joined us today. Do you have a final word or thought of advice for the parents out there as they're trying to help their students, navigate through this process?
Absolutely. I think sometimes as a parent, you can't see, you might see the calm duck on the top of the water, as people like to talk about it, but it's hard to see those feet paddling underneath. And your students really want to have a summer experience as well. And they're thinking about it, whether or not they're talking about it. And so to come alongside them and know that they may need to get to the end of the semester before they can look for an internship, know that we're here to help them, and they want that support from you too. You matter.
Great, thank you. Brian, if you can put my last slide up, I will actually just mention a few things that I thought about beforehand, and we put down a little sheet of paper around some next steps, which are very similar to what Heidi just mentioned. One of the things about this process is your child is looking for sort of reinforcement that they're okay. So you're being calm, optimistic, encouraging that it can work out, even though you may feel like you're wondering if it will. Hopefully our information tonight got you to a place where you can go, okay, I can believe it. I can actually trust you all to assume that this will be okay, even though you may not have evidence of that at this moment. Second, guide the student to come to our office and use all the resources we talked about today. Whatever it takes to get them to engage with us, we can help them see that it's doable, even if it feels like everyone else has something. At least, as we told you, that's not the truth, but that's the way it feels. It's like, that's okay. Everyone's got their own journey, and it can happen really quickly, especially in internships. Affirm them and don't get excited necessarily about them finishing, but actually just taking every step along the way is really what's important. Every person they meet, every person they talk to, it's like, wow, that's cool that you actually went out and networked. Like, I didn't do that when I was in college. Like, most people don't. And so the fact that you're doing something that's really great in this world where that's what you need to do is really important. Everything's changing. So, anything we might think of that is like, this is the way it works. It actually is sort of dynamic, especially with AI. And so let's just all be very flexible in that. And if you have any connections, offer them up, even just to meet, knowing that the student oftentimes will feel like, I don't want you to get me a job. It's like, no, I'm not getting you a job. I'm letting you meet someone who I know. And then again, reinforcing point number one. Lastly, as I mentioned, we'd love to have any great organizations out there hire our students. So if you actually do know someone, we'll be sending you an email to follow up, but this QR code can help you fill out a little form to help us get connected to you and offer some opportunities to students. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your students. Know that we are here for them. We'll be here all summer if they're having any challenges or even thinking ahead for the coming year. And I can't say enough about being, keeping your eye out for the career courses. If they are a rising anything, they could be rising sophomore, junior, or senior. They can take these career courses. And as you can see by the students who are with us today that Heidi has taught in her classes, they're really prepared, and your students will be too, no matter what stage they are in the process. It's never too late. Heidi, one last word for you to wrap up.
We're grateful for your students. We believe in them, and I know you do too. So we will work together with them, with you, because we know that they are going to have great experiences, and we want to help them gain them.
Well, have a great night and a great week. Again, we look forward to working with your students wherever they might be. And as always, like we like to wrap up, go Deeks.
That's right. Go Deeks.